Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you the new science fiction stories for you, and new adventure, new world.
You ever look at a nest of hornets and think, yeah, I'll just poke that with a stick? Neither did the Xylos Confederacy. But they did something dumber. They poked humanity. And then they stood there, confused, wondering why the buzzing wouldn't stop. Here's the thing about hornets. They don't sting you because they're brave. They sting you because they literally don't know how to be afraid. Same with humans. The galaxy learned that the hard way. The observation deck of the Vindicator smelled like recycled air and regret. Commander Thalon of the Xylos Confederacy stood with all four arms folded across her carapace, watching the blue and green marble rotate slowly beneath her ship. Earth. Beautiful, fragile, insignificant. Status report. She clicked, her mandibles forming the words in Standard Galactic. Species designation. Human. Population. Approximately 9 billion. Technology level. Pre-FTL. Class. 3 civilization at best. Subcommander Vex scrolled through data on a holographic display, his third eye blinking lazily. They've barely achieved rudimentary spaceflight. No shielding technology. No energy weapons. No faster-than-light capability. Thalen's antennae twitched with amusement. And this is the species the Vorn hegemony claimed was a potential threat. The Vorn overreact to everything. Remember when they classified space whales as a strategic danger? A ripple of alien laughter echoed through the bridge. Thalon studied the reports more carefully. Humans had spent most of their history fighting each other. Petty squabbles over land, resources, ideology. They'd invented nuclear weapons before they'd achieved global cooperation. They'd landed on their moon using less computing power than the Vindicator used to recycle air. But there was something in the data that made her pause. A pattern she couldn't quite identify. Human conflict resolution was strange. They fought brutally, yes, but they also built hospitals for their enemies after wars. They sent aid to nations that had bombed them decades earlier. They seemed to operate on a logic that made no logical sense. Commander, Vex tilted his head. The High Council is waiting for your assessment. Thalon straightened. Assessment is simple. Humans are primitive, disorganized, emotionally volatile. They pose no military threat to the Confederacy. However, she hesitated. They might be useful as labor. Their physical endurance appears remarkable. Some records show individual humans surviving injuries that would kill a Xylos outright. Shall I recommend subjugation protocols? Yes. Low priority. We'll annex their system within the standard time frame. 50 cycles, no rush. Send a delegation to establish preliminary contact. Standard terms: surrender, resource access, population compliance. Vex nodded and began transmitting. That was their first mistake, assuming humans would follow the rules. The delegation landed in Geneva 3 weeks later. Thalon had chosen to lead it personally, partly for diplomatic prestige, partly out of curiosity. She wanted to see these strange apes face to face. The landing site was a field outside the United Nations building. Thousands of humans had gathered behind barricades. Thalon noted their facial expressions: fear, confusion, hostility, and something else. Something her translator struggled to define. Commander, they're holding signs, Vex whispered. Mostly profanity. A few religious references. One appears to say, take me to your dealer. I don't understand that one. Focus. The Xylos delegation descended the ramp. 15 of them, all in formal diplomatic carapace armor. Thalon had rehearsed the speech 3 times. Standard annexation declaration. Terms of surrender. Minimal resistance would be met with minimal force. Maximum resistance would be met with. A human stepped forward from the delegation waiting on the ground. He was taller than she'd expected. Broad shoulders. A scar above his left eye. His expression was unreadable. Ambassador Chunwei, he said, his voice steady. Welcome to Earth. Thalon bowed slightly. Xylos gesture of acknowledgement. Commander Thalon of the Xylos Confederacy. I come with a proposal for your species integration into our dominion. I see. Chin's face didn't change. And if we decline? The question hung in the air. The Lon had expected fear, pleading, maybe defiance born of ignorance. This was different. This was calm, calculated, as if he'd already considered every possible outcome and found most of them acceptable. Declining would be unwise, the Lon said carefully. The Confederacy has existed for over 40,000 cycles. We have absorbed 217 species. Those who resist are diminished. Chen nodded slowly. I understand. But I have to ask, have you ever absorbed a species that had already figured out how to split the atom before they stopped hitting each other with rocks? The Lon blinked. That's not. Because we did. We built nukes when we were still wiping dirt off our farming tools. We put a man on the moon using slide rules and sheer stubbornness. And now you're telling us to bow. Chen smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Commander, I don't think you've done your homework. The diplomatic meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, Phelan's headache was immense. The humans had questions. So many questions. They wanted details about governance structures, resource allocation, cultural preservation, legal frameworks. They treated annexation like a merger negotiation, not a surrender. They're insane, Vex said as they returned to the Vindicator. Complete cultural madness. One of them asked me if they could keep their fantasy football leagues. I don't know what that is, but it sounded obscene. They're not insane, the Lon said quietly. There's something worse. What? She stared at the planet below. They've been expecting us. The deadline for surrender was set at 90 standard days. The Lon returned to the Vindicator as the negotiations continued through intermediaries. Something about the humans bothered her. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something. On day 47, she got her answer. Commander, we've detected unusual energy signatures from Earth's moon, Vex reported. Not military, more like industrial. Show me. The holographic display zoomed in on Luna's surface. Phelan's blood, or whatever passed for interspecies, ran cold. Carved into the lunar rock were structures. Massive structures. Shipyards by the look of them. And they weren't new. Radiometric dating suggested they'd been built over 70 years ago. 70 years, she whispered. They've had a hidden shipyard for 70 years. Not just that, Commander. Look at this. The display shifted to show Mars. Then the asteroid belt. Then the outer planets. Everywhere the scans probed, they found human infrastructure. Mining operations. Manufacturing hubs. Defense platforms. All hidden from standard sensors using technology that shouldn't have existed at their level. How? Vex's voice cracked. How they hide this? The Lon replayed the historical records. Human wars. Human conflicts. The Cold War, the resource wars, the unification conflicts, all of it had been real. But she saw now what she'd missed before. Every major conflict had driven technological leaps. Every crisis had forced innovation. And the humans had carefully, deliberately used their own wars as camouflage. While the galaxy watched them fight, they were building. They're not a pre-FTL civilization, the Lon said slowly. They're a post-FTL civilization that pretended to be pre-FTL. But why? The Lon thought of Chen's smile. That calm, knowing expression. Because they wanted us to underestimate them. They wanted to see who would come knocking first. And now they know exactly what they're facing. She opened a channel to the High Council. We need to abort the annexation. Immediately. The Council's response was swift and dismissive. You're overreacting, Commander. They're one species. One system. They can't possibly. They've been preparing for this for 70 years, the Lon interrupted. Maybe longer. I've analyzed their history. These people fought a global war over an ideology that lasted less than a single generation. They dropped nuclear weapons on civilian populations. And then they made friends with the survivors. Does that sound like a species that follows logic? The annexation proceeds as planned. Prepare for the transmission cut. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice, human, crisp and calm. Commander the Lon. This is Ambassador Chun. I believe we need to have another conversation. The second meeting took place aboard the Vindicator. Chen arrived alone, unarmed, wearing the same suit he'd worn at the first negotiation. Dalan had expected a delegation, security, at least some pretense of caution. But the human walked onto her ship like he was visiting a neighbor's house. "Nice ship," he said, looking around the bridge. "Bit sterile, though. You should get some plants." Vex's mandibles clicked with indignation. "You're in no position to critique our sub-commander." Dalan raised a hand. "Ambassador Chun, you wanted to talk." "I did." Chun sat down in a chair, clearly not designed for human anatomy. Managed to look comfortable anyway. "The High Council rejected your recommendation. They're sending a fleet. 12 warships, by our estimates. Should arrive in 3 weeks. 4. Phelan's blood ran cold again. How do you know that? We've had ears on your communications for about 6 years now. Your encryption is embarrassingly weak, by the way. You might want to look into that." Chun shrugged. "But that's not why I'm here." "Then, why are you here?" Chun leaned forward. For the first time, Dalan saw something real in his expression. Not the diplomatic mask. Not the calm facade. Something older. Something that had been forged in fire. "I'm here to give you a chance to leave." Silence. Then Vex laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Leave? You're threatening us? With what? Your primitive missile technology? Your chemical rockets? We have plasma cannons that could. Your plasma cannons are very impressive," Chen interrupted. "We know. We've been studying them for years. Every ship that's entered our system, we've scanned. Every weapon, every shield, every engine. We've reverse-engineered most of your technology. Improved on some of it." He pulled a small device from his pocket, set it on the table. "For example, this is a Xylos data transmitter. We captured one during a freight accident 8 years ago. Our engineers spent 3 years figuring out how it worked. Then, they spent 2 years making it better. This version has 3 times the range and consumes half the power." Dalan stared at the device. It looked identical to the ones on her own ship. "You reverse-engineered our technology from a single wreck. You crash-landed a cargo vessel in the Pacific Ocean. We recovered it within 6 hours. Your people didn't even file a missing ship report for 3 weeks." Chin smiled again. "Commander, here's what you don't understand about humans. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. We're not the smartest. But we are, without question, the most stubborn things in the universe. We don't give up. We don't stop. And we never, ever forget. The Xylos High Council ignored Phelan's warnings. 12 warships entered the Sol system on schedule, led by Admiral Karath, a veteran of 19 annexation campaigns. He was confident, arrogant. He broadcast a message to Earth on all frequencies. "People of Earth, you have failed to comply with the terms of annexation. Effective immediately, your planet is under military occupation. Any resistance will be met with the transmission cut." Karath frowned. "What happened?" "Sir, we're being jammed. All frequencies. It's coming from everywhere." Everywhere. That was accurate. Thousands of human ships had risen from hiding places across the system. They emerged from the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter, from the shadows of planets. They were ugly ships, asymmetrical, patchwork, clearly constructed from salvaged materials. They looked nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels of the Confederacy. But there were so many. "Admiral, we're detecting over 3,000 human vessels. They're not following any standard formation." Karath studied the holographic display. The human ships were arranged in what appeared to be complete chaos. No battle lines. No command structure. Just a massive, disorganized swarm moving toward his fleet. "What is this?" he muttered. "Are they untrained?" "Unknown, sir. They're not responding to hails." The first wave of human ships entered weapons range. Karath gave the order to fire. Plasma bolts lanced across the void and splashed harmlessly against energy shields that shouldn't have existed. "Shields? They have shields." Karath's voice rose. "Where did they get? Their shields are adapting to our weapons fire," a tactical officer reported. "Every time we adjust frequency, they compensate within milliseconds. It's like they've been training against our systems for years." "Because they have," a quiet voice said. Karath turned. The lawn stood at the back of the bridge, her expression grim. I told you, she said. They've been preparing. The battle lasted 7 hours. By the end, 9 of the 12 Xylos warships were crippled or destroyed. Karatha's flagship, the Obliterator, had taken heavy damage but remained operational. The human losses were significant. Over 400 ships destroyed, tens of thousands of casualties. But the humans kept fighting. That was what terrified the Lon the most. Not their technology, not their tactics, their refusal to stop. Xylo's ships retreated when combat became unsustainable. It was logical. It was efficient. Humans didn't retreat. They just kept coming. Admiral, we're receiving a message from the human flagship. Put it through. Chen's face appeared on the view screen. He looked tired. There was a bandage on his forehead. But his eyes were the same, calm, knowing, ancient. Admiral Karath, you have 3 ships left. We have over 2,000. We're offering you the same deal I offered Commander the Lon. Leave. Take your people home. Tell the High Council that Sol System is closed. Karatha's jaw tightened. You destroyed 9 of my ships. You killed thousands of my crew. And you expect me to— We didn't start this war, Chen said quietly. You did. You came to our home, threatened our people, demanded our surrender. We're defending ourselves. That's all we've ever done. Your species is primitive. Chaotic. You don't deserve. Chen laughed, a tired, sad sound. Admiral, we've been primitive and chaotic for our entire existence. We've fought wars over religion, over skin color, over which side of a river we were born on. We've committed atrocities that would make your ancestors weep. And we've also built hospitals for our enemies. We've sent food to nations that try to destroy us. We've looked at the worst parts of ourselves and decided over and over again to try to be better. He paused. You came here thinking we were weak because we fight each other. You don't understand. We fight each other because we're the only ones who can. Against an outside threat. He smiled. We become something else entirely. Karath retreated. The surviving Xylos ships limped back to Confederacy space, carrying stories that would spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Humans couldn't be beaten. Humans couldn't be reasoned with. Humans were insane. But the story didn't end there. The High Council, humiliated and furious, voted unanimously for a full-scale invasion. 400 warships, 50,000 ground troops, the largest military force assembled in Xylos history. They would crush humanity completely, erase them from existence, make an example that would echo through the ages. Delon resigned her commission. She couldn't be part of what was coming. She knew, somehow, deep in her core, that the Council was making a terrible mistake. The invasion fleet jumped into Sol System on a Thursday. Earth time. By Friday, they were losing. Report. General Zorith bellowed from the command deck of the Annihilator. Sir, our ground forces are being eliminated by something. We can't identify it. Explain. The tactical officer's voice trembled. The humans aren't just fighting. They're using tactics we've never seen. Ambushes from civilian buildings. Booby traps in the streets. They're hiding among their own population, blending in, then striking and disappearing. Our troops are terrified. They can't tell friend from enemy. Zorith stared at the tactical display. Green icons, Xylos units, were blinking out across the planet's surface. Not in clusters, not in organized waves. One by one, isolated, alone. What kind of species uses its own cities as battlegrounds? He whispered. The kind that's been doing it for 10,000 years, the Lon said quietly. She'd come aboard despite her resignation, hoping to minimize casualties. General, listen to me. You cannot win this. Every human you kill creates 10 more who want revenge. Every building you destroy becomes a fortress. Every tactical rule you follow, they break. They've been fighting wars like this since before your species invented writing. Zorith turned on her. You're a traitor. A coward. These are primitives with primitives? The Lon laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. General, you're losing to primitives. You brought 400 warships to conquer a species that hasn't even left its own solar system. And you're losing. Who's primitive now? The space battle was worse. Human ships didn't fight fair. They didn't follow the rules of engagement. They rammed Xylo's vessels when their weapons failed. They sacrificed themselves to protect civilian transports. They used their own ships as projectiles, slamming into enemy formations with no regard for survival. A Xylo's captain would retreat when a ship reached 30% damage. Humans fought until the air ran out, until the reactor went critical, until there was literally nothing left. And when a human ship exploded, the crew didn't scream. They sang. Their singing, Vex whispered, watching the battle from an observation post on Mars. They're actually singing while they die. Delon stood beside him, unable to look away. What are they singing? I don't know. It sounds old. Religious, maybe. Or military. Some kind of anthem. Play it. The audio feed crackled to life. Human voices, distorted by static, rising together in song. It wasn't beautiful. It was raw, desperate, defiant. A song about a flag and a land and something worth dying for. Delon didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. These people would never surrender. Not because they couldn't, because the idea had never crossed their minds. The invasion collapsed on the third day. General Zorith ordered a retreat, a full, unconditional withdrawal. Only 200 of his original 400 ships survived. Nearly 30,000 ground troops had been killed or captured. The rest were broken, traumatized, haunted by what they'd seen. Humans didn't take prisoners for revenge. They took prisoners to protect them from other humans. That was the strangest thing of all. When Xylo's soldiers surrendered, human medics treated their wounds, fed them, gave them blankets, asked about their families. Why? One captured soldier asked his human guard, "Why are you helping us?" "We came to kill you." The guard, a young woman with tired eyes and a bandaged arm, shrugged. "Because you didn't know any better. Someone lied to you about who we are. That's not your fault. But we shot at you. We killed your people." "I know." She looked away. "And that's between you and whatever God you believe in. But I'm not going to let you freeze to death. That's not who we are." The captured soldier told that story to everyone who would listen. It spread through the Confederacy faster than any official report. Humans were monsters. Humans were saviors. Humans were impossible to understand. And somewhere in the depths of Xylo's space, the Lawn sat in her quarters, watching the broadcast of Earth's victory celebration. Humans dancing in the streets. Humans crying with relief. Humans hugging their children, their parents, their friends. She finally understood. The galaxy had looked at humanity and seen weakness, division, chaos. What they'd missed was the thing that made all of that irrelevant. Humans had spent their entire existence fighting for survival. Fighting each other, fighting nature, fighting themselves. Every war, every disaster, every loss had forged them into something the galaxy had never encountered. They didn't know how to quit. They didn't know how to be afraid. And they would burn the universe to the ground before they let anyone take their freedom. The High Council convened an emergency session. The question before them was simple. What now? "We can't fight them," one counselor said. "They're not rational. They don't follow predictable patterns. Every tactical model we've developed has failed. We can't negotiate with them," another argued. "They'll never trust us. Not after what we've done." "Then, what do we suggest? Surrender? To a species that hasn't even achieved FTL travel." The chamber fell silent. Then, a holographic display flickered to life. Chen's face appeared again, older now, grayer but still calm. Still knowing. "Counselors, I've been listening to your debate. I'd like to offer a third option. How are you accessing this channel?" A counselor demanded. "Trade secret." Chen smiled. "Here's my proposal. We don't want any territory. We don't want any resources. We don't want to conquer anyone. What we want is what we've always wanted, to be left alone. In exchange, we're willing to share certain technologies, medical advances, energy solutions, things that could improve life throughout the Confederacy. You expect us to believe you just give us technology after we try to destroy you? No, Chin said. I expect you to earn it. Slowly, over time, through trade, through diplomacy, through proving that you've learned something from this disaster. We're not fools. Counselors, we know you'll try again someday. But we also know that every time you try, you'll lose a little more. And eventually, you'll realize that cooperation is better than conquest. He paused. That's what makes us different. You see conquest as the goal. We see it as the failure. We've spent our whole history learning that lesson. Now it's your turn. The war ended that day. Not with a treaty, exactly. More of an understanding. The Xylos Confederacy withdrew from human space, established a permanent exclusion zone around Sol system, and quietly began sending diplomatic feelers toward Earth. Dalan became the Confederacy's first ambassador to humanity. She arrived on Earth 6 months after the invasion, nervous and confused. Chun met her at the spaceport, shook her hand, she'd learned the gesture, and welcomed her to Geneva. "You're not what I expected," she admitted as they walked through the city. "Any of you. You're not the barbarians we imagined. You're not the saviors your propaganda claims. You're just people. Complicated, contradictory, impossible people." Chun laughed. "Welcome to humanity. We're a lot. That's one word for it." They stopped at a small cafe overlooking a lake. Chun ordered coffee. Dalan declined. Xylos couldn't process caffeine, and they sat in silence for a moment. "Why didn't you destroy us?" Dalan asked finally. "At the end, you had the firepower. You had the momentum. You could have pushed into our space, taken our worlds. Why didn't you?" Chun stared at the water. "Because someone would have stopped us. Not you. Us. Our own people. We've been down that road before. Conquest. Empire. Taking what isn't ours." He shook his head. "It never ends well. For anyone. So you chose mercy?" "You chose survival. Mercy is just part of it." He turned to look at her. "Here's the thing you still don't understand, Ambassador. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we had something to protect. Our families. Our homes. Our future. You came to take all of that away. And there's nothing in the universe more dangerous than someone who has nothing left to lose." Dalan thought about the singing, about the guards who gave blankets to their enemies, about the young woman who'd said, "That's not who we are." She thought about all of it, and she felt something she'd never felt before. Respect, terror, and a strange, unexpected kinship. The galaxy would eventually learn the lesson the Xylos had learned. Humans weren't the strongest. They weren't the smartest. They weren't the most advanced. But they were the most human. And that, it turned out, was the most dangerous thing in the universe. Years later, long after the war had faded into history, a young Xylos cadet asked Dalan a question. "Elder, what's the most important thing you learned from the human conflict?" Dalan was old now. Her carapace had faded to gray. Her eyes weren't what they used to be, but she remembered everything. "The humans have a saying," she said slowly. "They say, you don't want to wake a sleeping giant. I never understood that. Giants are slow. Giants are clumsy. Why would anyone fear a sleeping giant?" She paused. "Then I met humans, and I realized the sleeping giant isn't the one to fear. It's the one you just woke up. Because the one you just woke up is confused and angry and very, very hungry. But worse than that." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The one you just woke up hasn't had its coffee yet." The cadet laughed. "Dalan didn't." "You're laughing," she said. "You think I'm joking. I'm not. I saw humans fight on no sleep for 72 hours. I saw them eat rations that had expired a decade ago. I saw them smile while they bled out from wounds that would have killed a Xylos in minutes." She shook her head. "You think their weapons are dangerous. Their technology is dangerous. Their tactics are dangerous." She looked the cadet in the eye. "Their stubbornness is dangerous. Their creativity is dangerous. Their ability to look at certain death and say not today is the most dangerous thing I've ever witnessed. So yes, fear the sleeping giant, but fear the awake one more, because the awake one is drinking coffee. And nothing good happens after that." The cadet didn't laugh again. And somewhere in a small cafe by a lake on a blue-green planet, a human named Chun lifted his cup and smiled. He didn't know what Dalan was saying, but somehow he knew humanity had won. Not the war. That was just a battle. Humanity had won something bigger. They'd won the right to be misunderstood, underestimated, and utterly, completely terrifying. And they'd done it all without ever leaving home. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity? Humanity was just getting started.